The third Monday of January is a federal holiday honoring the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Did you know that this Nobel Peace Prize winner has a cherished relationship with a St. Louis pastor? I'm Benita Cornute, your host for Open Source TV. You don't want to miss our conversation about the trusted bond between this civil rights icon and the Reverend Earl Nance Sr. We'll be back in a moment. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is known for his fearless commitment to social justice in America. He worked with various groups and individuals in the fight for civil rights. Among them was the pastor of Greater Mount Carmel Baptist Church here in St. Louis. Today we're sitting here in the sanctuary of Greater Mount Carmel with Reverend Nance's son, the Reverend Earl Nance Jr. It gives us great pleasure to be with you. Welcome to the Open Source, Reverend Nance.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
You know, we want to start, I guess, first by talking about the fact that this is a national holiday honoring Dr. King.
Yes.
Why? Why do we need to make sure that people are reminded of who he is and what he did?
Dr. Martin Luther King is a civil rights icon. He was a great preacher and orator, and he left so much for us in the fight for equality. And what he went through, the beatings, going to jail, all of the bad things that were said about him by racists and by sheriffs and everything. Of course, he deserves a holiday. And I think this nation, these people work so hard to get that holiday. Stevie Wonder and so many others lent their voices. Stevie even wrote a song. And it very much deserved to have this African-American man be among others that have been honored with a day.
His work changed America in so many ways, didn't it? I mean, in terms of access for African Americans to public housing, public transportation, things of that nature.
Absolutely. God sent Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. the way God sent Moses to free his people from the Egyptians. I believe that God sent Martin Luther King Jr. here to win that fight and to fight that fight. And he was the perfect one to do it. I do not believe that we would be where we are now without his leadership, without his courage, and without his sacrifice and his family's sacrifice to achieve what we have achieved today.
Well, part of his achievement depended on the support of others across the country, one of whom happened to be your father, Reverend Earl Nance Sr. How did the two of them come to know one another and actually engage in this struggle together?
They met in the 40s. They were students at Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. Dr. Martin Luther King was younger than my father. My father had just gotten out of the Army. And he went to school at Morehouse and encountered Dr. King there. Dr. King had been to Boston University. And they met there and became fast friends and were classmates in several classes there at Morehouse. Both of them were young preachers.
Had they been ordained prior to going to college?
They'd been ordained.
Okay.
At young ages, and my father would preach for Youth Day at Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta for Dr. Martin Luther King Sr. And that's how they became good friends.
When your father recognized Dr. King's role in the civil rights movement, did he feel compelled to get involved because he was his friend? Did that draw him to be supportive of Dr. King?
It compelled him to do what he could here in St. Louis, because we were going through our own kind of apartheid here in St. Louis. He was proud of King, of course. He was respectful of what he was doing. He was scared for him because of the pushback that was happening, and the fact that he had to go to jail and the letters from the Birmingham jail compelled my father and my uncle, John Nance Sr., who was pastor of Washington Tabernacle at the time, to raise money for the movement. They were able to raise money for the movement and send it to Dr. King and his associates.
Wow. Well, you know, Dr. King did a lot in terms of changing our world, and it required the involvement of pastors across the country. Why was the church so critical and necessary in that struggle for civil rights?
The church had been, and to some extent still is, the focal point for the black community. And during those times, the church was the most effective place in order to organize and to come together and to plan. That was really mostly all that we owned was the church. And the black pastor became the leaders of those movements and would give the opportunity for the people to speak out and to give ideas and suggestions of how they would go forward.
And the space, they had the space.
They had the space.
Built, you know, pews, large rooms, microphones, and even some spillover space in some of the churches.
Correct.
That obviously made a big difference in terms of what Dr. King was able to do. Well, when we come back, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about some of the activities that Dr. King was involved with here in St. Louis. We'll be back in a moment.
I would say the wonderful thing about Dr. Joe is I don't think he's any set person's type of provider. I think he is the type of provider where he lets the parents kind of guide, you know, where they want to go with the appointment or with their child and those types of decisions. So he's your thought partner, right? And he's not going to push what he thinks. He really meets you where you are, and it's wonderful.
The friendship between Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. and Reverend Earl Nance Sr. flourished as the two continued to work and gather support for the civil rights movement. There were times when Reverend Dr. King was invited to St. Louis. During multiple visits, Dr. King spoke to enthusiastic audiences here in the city. The invitation to speak would come from his friend, Reverend Earl Nance Sr. In 1957, a crowd of 9,000 gathered at the Kiel Auditorium Convention Hall for a freedom rally featuring Dr. King. Funds raised during that and other visits supported efforts to dismantle segregation in the South. He addressed huge crowds at Washington Tabernacle Church, where Reverend Nance's uncle, the late Reverend Dr. John E. Nance, was pastor. Now, Reverend Nance, you were a child when Reverend Dr. King visited St. Louis. What do you remember about those visits? And how many times do you think he came at your father's invitation?
He came twice at Washington Tabernacle that I know of.
Okay.
We're talking about around April of around 1963.
Okay.
I was around 9 or 10 years old, and the crowd was gathering. I was sitting near the front of the church in the pew with my mother when Dr. King and my father and others, Dr. Ralph Abernathy and Dr. Shuttlesworth, came from the back out of the pastor's office. And after they sat down, my father beckoned for me to come to the pulpit, and I said, "Me?" And I got up and went on up to the pulpit. And he said, "Son, I want you to meet my friend, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr." And Dr. King greeted me. He said, "Hello, Earl, do you know why we're here?" And I said, "I think so." And he said, "We're here because we're trying to clear a path for young boys and girls like you to have a future in this country."
He was always teaching. He took that opportunity to make sure that you understood.
Understood. And that had a great impact upon me. You know, that and watching my father work in the city had a great impact on me, even at that young age. You know, people might have thought that children my age weren't paying attention, but we were. It was right there in front of us. and so I couldn't help but be caught up in the moment and in the desire to do something helpful for our people.
Your father was an advisor to Dr. King?
Yes.
So Dr. King listened to his advice
Yes.
on certain issues?
Yes.
Do you recall anything in particular that he may have helped influence?
I think my father just gave him a lot of moral support, and when they talked on some details of the civil rights movement, I think my father might have given him some insight on what to look for, what to watch out for, certain people that he knew in the South to deal with, who to deal with, who not to deal with.
In 1956, I understand your father actually wrote to Dr. King inviting him to run for president of the National Baptist Convention.
Yes.
Why did he do that? Why did he see?
He felt that Dr. King would be the perfect leader at the perfect time for the convention. You see, during that time, during the National Baptist Convention, there was only one leader for so many years who would never give it up, Dr. Jackson in Chicago. Matter of fact, there were instances where there was some violence when leadership was trying to change, and that's documented in the Pulitzer Prize winning novel by Taylor. I'm blanking on his name right. Taylor Branch in Parting the Waters. King, of course, wasn't able to become that, but it sparked something because later on, a few years later, around 1960-61, the Progressive National Baptist Convention split from the National Baptist. The National Baptist and Dr. Jackson did not like the direction that King was going and wouldn't give him a voice. The Progressive National Baptist Convention in the early 60s gave Dr. King a voice, and he became a part of us.
I see. And that was critical for that network of churches that was going to support the movement.
Absolutely.
You had to have the strong leader there and understand that you follow the leader and you work with making change in the community. Well, obviously, he was recognized internationally for doing this work in the community. The Nobel Peace Prize, that was an honor bestowed upon him. Did that impress, how did that impact your father?
My father was very proud of it, that his friend had gotten this major award. This fine black man had become a part of the pantheon of great leaders who were bestowed this award. And the thing about it, though, even Dr. King was never a rich man, but the money, the prize that he got, he donated and put it right back in the civil rights movement. He didn't use any of it for himself or his family.
You know, I was going to ask you, what was he like as a person? I mean, when you were in the room with him, I mean, what did you feel when you were in his presence, when you listened to him?
The first thing that struck you is that to be for such a powerful man, he was a humble man. He wasn't a braggart. He was very calm. He was very peaceful. He was very determined. But when he spoke, he was transformed into this orator, into this great leader. But sitting there and looking at him and observing him, you wouldn't think that would come out of such a humble man.
Now, what about his sense of humor? I understand he had pretty good wit when it came to situations.
He and Dad joked around. Abernathy, Shuttlesworth, they would tell jokes back and forth, or like you say, quick wit. You know, some asides, some comebacks on whatever was said. So yeah, a good sense of humor is what he had, what all of them had back then. And I think it served them well.
You had to have a sense of humor in order to deal with all the pressure and the struggle that existed then. We're going to come back in a minute and continue our conversation. We'll be back with Reverend Earl Nance, Jr.
My guest today is Jordan Braxton. For more than 3 decades, she's been an activist here in St. Louis for the gay community. As an HIV/STI prevention specialist at Vivint Health, she spends a lot of her time teaching others about the need for equality.
Reverend Nance, I understand that your father was asked to serve in a leadership role in organizing the Poor People's March on Washington.
Yes.
He did a lot in terms of organizing major events.
Yes.
With Dr. King. Is that correct?
That's correct. Well, we're talking about late March, almost April. And I'm lying on the floor watching TV, and the phone rings. And my father comes in and answers the phone. And it wasn't very long before I realized he was talking to Dr. King on the phone. Dr. King at that time was at the airport. He was in between flights on his way to Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And he asked my dad to come out so they could talk. So my father went out to the airport, and they sat and talked, and Dr. King told him about the planning for the Poor People's March. And he wanted my father to serve as the chairman for Missouri to get local pastors and other people to prepare to come to Florida for the Poor People's March. Mm-hmm. And so my dad accepted that assignment, came back home. Dr. King told him, but first, I'm going to go home, and then I'm going to go to Memphis for the sanitation workers. He was telling them about how he was trying to help them in their plight. And so Dr. King, of course, went home and met with his family and headed to Memphis. And we all know what happened next when April 4th approached. He was assassinated. And instead of my father meeting him in Florida, he wound up going to his funeral in Atlanta and marching along the case sign as on the horse-drawn carriage carried the body of Dr. King to his funeral.
That had to be, well, I remember it. As a child, I remember it happening and the impact it had. But for a friend and a comrade, so to speak, a confidant, certainly that had to be a challenge for your father.
Yes, it was. By that time, I was in high school, 1968. And when we got the news, my father just bowed his head. I mean, he feared that something like this would happen. And of course, Dr. King in their conversations feared that would happen to him. As a matter of fact, I recall him saying when Malcolm X was assassinated, that he said, that's going to happen to me. And so, but even with that knowledge, it was still quite a shock to my dad. But he gathered himself and went to the airport, got on the plane, and went to Atlanta for his funeral. Years later, my father returned the favor to Dr. Martin Luther King Sr., and Dr. Martin Luther King Sr. spoke here at Greater Mount Carmel for our Emancipation Proclamation service. So, yeah.
What about, that's a wonderful legacy, that a connection between the two families and the two churches. You know, you have maintained a bond and a support system for one another, which certainly has to be beneficial for your congregation, both congregations for sure. Well, in closing, I guess, as we're celebrating Dr. King's birthday and our national holiday, I have to ask, do you think that the teachings of Dr. King have a relevance today, given what we're dealing with and where we have been the last 5 years, 10 years even?
Dr. King's message always has relevance. There are some things that never lose their relevancy. And we really need to kind of go back and revisit some of those things. I know we're in a new day and a new time and a new kind of person. All I know is black people are not going to accept going backward. And with the current climate that we have right now, there seems to be a movement to like suppressing voting rights and all of that to move things backward. And we're not going to stand for it. Mm-hmm. And it's because of the strength that Dr. King showed and others that we won't be turned back. You know, what's amazing is that my father passed away on April 4th of 2000, and that was the same date that Dr. King was assassinated.
I noticed the dates. I saw that coincidence. Mm-hmm. That was something.
Yeah.
To see that, and certainly another point of bonding between the two men, for sure. Well, I thank you so much for your time and your conversation today. It has been inspirational and certainly rewarding to know that you have this connection and your family has the connection to Reverend Dr. King. Thank you for joining us as we discuss the historic role of your family in the civil rights movement. Your father, the late Reverend Earl Nance Sr., was instrumental in pursuing social change, and we must never forget the contributions of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. That's why we have this national holiday. Thank you again, Reverend Earl Nance Jr., pastor of Greater Mount Carmel Baptist Church.
And thank you
I'm your
very much.
host, Bonita Cornute, and thank you for watching the Open Source TV.